Welcome to the JSK webinar. We're glad that you're here. I'm Dawn Garcia. I'm the director of the John S. Knight Journalism Fellowships here at Stanford. And joining me today is Pam Maples, JSK Managing Director. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Dawn.
Okay, Q&A time. We are ready for your questions.
So we have someone is asking, and a couple of people have asked a version of this.
Okay.
You can answer, I will. Are journalists who are out of work or have experienced layoffs eligible for consideration? Or do we only accept working journalists?
Go ahead, Pam.
So, we say that we want applicants who are working in journalism and have at least 5 years of professional experience. We're very aware what's been happening recently and the sort of turbulence going on in the industry. So if you've been laid off or lost your journalism job, in the last few months or several months, but you're fully intending to stay in journalism and you have ideas about what you want to work on, to be ready to do that, you're eligible to apply. We're not going to disregard your application because you got, laid off recently. So that's more aimed at, there are people, unfortunately, because of what's been happening in the industry, who've been out of journalism a few years and have had to do other sorts of work that may be very important and rewarding. But it's not journalism, and they're hoping that our program will help them make a re-entry to journalism. And that, re-entering after being away from it is not something that our program really is built to help you do.
Yeah. So. Okay, it looks like the questions are coming in.
So here's another one that I'm not surprised is coming up for folks who have applied before and they're reapplying this year. We made some shifts in the application this year, the questions we ask. And I'm looking at one now, I think there's more than one question. Could you talk about the shift in the style, which is more focused on a specific, in the past, we focused more on a specific question that they had to state that they wanted to explore. And it's more broad now. And why is that?
Yeah.
Why did we change the application?
Yeah. So one thing, we change the application every year to some degree. We evolve it for a number of reasons. A couple of them are, are these questions being clear? Are we getting at the answers that we want? Not the answer, but are people understanding the questions that we're asking? And so are we really getting the information we need to know the most we can about you? So one thing that changes every year is some of the wording on the questions. We have found, specifically to your question, we have found that people were getting hung up in some ways on having to say a 15-word description of what they wanted to work on. We thought that would be helpful and focus people. Unfortunately, it paralyzed some people, and we don't want to do that. We want people to so we just changed to say, what do you want to explore? What is the topic area focus? So we still ask a question like that, but it's a little bit different. So we want to hear from you and not paralyze you. Yeah. Anything else, Pam, on that? I mean, you're the person doing a lot of the restructuring of this application. So anything else you want to say about?
No, I mean, I think you explained it clearly very well.
Good. Okay.
We learn things every year, and so we try to just reinforce. We try to have our application sort of, be as relevant and reflect what is going on and what we're seeing in our applicant pools, in the industry, but also how clearly did the previous application support people to explain to us what they want to do and provide us a clear image.
Right. I'm going to say one change that happened a number of years ago, but is still sometimes, and if you open an application, you'll see this already, but if you haven't for some reason, we do not require letters of recommendation. You do not need to go get letters, which is quite labor intensive and sometimes frustrating when your letter writer is late sending in their letters. So we ask instead for references, names, contact information of people who know you and your work well. And so that is just something that's changed over the years. We realize that's the better way to go.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I can see some questions in the chat about recommendation letters. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's great.
Yeah, don't have that be a problem for you because it's not what we need.
There's a lot of great questions here. We'll try to get through as many as we can.
Okay.
So someone is struggling to decide whether to apply. They're at a fork in the road, and it comes to whether or not I want to stay in journalism. I'm burnout, but I'm passionate about this industry and I want to help journalism. How do you think this program could help someone like me? Would it revive my passion?
Well, journalism is a hard career, right? It's a hard industry to be in, and we want to keep great people in journalism. And sometimes people do get a little burned out. If you have the passion to be a journalist, I don't know that we're going to revive your passion. You need to have that passion, but I think you're going to be refreshed and restored as a fellow by being with a number of other fantastic other fellows who are coming into this program from all over the world and the stimulating Stanford campus. So there's many things I think that would make you remember all the reasons you got into journalism. If you really feel like this isn't for me anymore, that's kind of a personal question that you'll have to answer yourself. But I feel like people do come in and come out of our program ready to tackle the big challenges in journalism.
I mean, I would say I think it's really important. I mean, I'm not trying to assume I understand what's going on, but it's super important to be honest with yourself and spend some time reflecting on that question, because our program is, just like I said previously, that our program isn't really built to help people who've been out of the business or focused on that, like for a few years, maybe forced out, but try to re-enter after a longer absence. We are not focused at all, I hope it's obvious, but on helping people transition out of journalism and figure out their next thing. So if you really sit with this a little bit and feel like, I just, for my family, for my health, for whatever, I need to figure out what's next for me that's not journalism, then this isn't going to be the program that's going to help you with that. We don't offer that sort of like coaching and programming. So,
we are not helping people transition out of journalism. I mean, I do want to say that. And I mean, and as I said, it's a hard business. We know that.
And we certainly have alumni who are no longer in journalism. We see what the world is happening. And by the way, someone asked, and I answered it in the chat and sent a link, but someone asked about examples of roles that alumni go into. And on the About page, there's a link in the chat. I mean, in the Q&A, but also in the Q&A, not the chat, but also on our website and on our About page. On the bottom of that, there is a sampling of several recent alumni and what they are currently doing or their roles. So you can get a sense if that's one of your questions there. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's a great example of, great thing to say, Pam.
Someone is asking, they're stuck on one of the application questions, which is one of the new questions. We ask applicants, what do you want to have contributed to other journalists? This is where we talk about, think about 3 years from now. What do you want to have contributed to other journalists or the community you seek to serve through your journalism? Why is this important to you? So Dawn, what are we trying to get at with that question?
Yeah, so I'll take a stab and then Pam jump in if you'd like to. This is a great question. So one of the things that we're finding and that we want to support are journalists who are thinking beyond themselves. So thinking about how to help journalism, how to help other journalists, help community that you are serving and working on, rather than sort of a myopic, I'm just focusing on myself, because we really feel like journalism needs a collaborative, collective leadership model that's going to help raise all boats, as they say. And so it's going to be thinking bigger than yourself. And then also, what are you dreaming about? in the future? What would you want to see for you and journalism in the future? Yeah.
Yeah, because we all know that increasingly journalism is collaborative, collective work. You know, at the days when a journalist could go into a newsroom and be a fabulous reporter, maybe, and do great stories, but largely work, you know, on their own, are, you know, and maybe not have to worry about what was happening out there in the broader journalism world or engage with it much. And so that question helps us get a sense of what are the kinds of things that you're most engaged with and thinking about that are kind of on your own important personal professional goals.
It also, Pam, it just occurs to me as you say that, it also helps us understand how you might be in a group.
Yep.
Because it is a very much of a cohort experience and not a solitary one. So that's another benefit for us hearing the answer to that question.
Yeah. Yeah. So that kind of indirectly reads to, I saw a question here. Let me find this again. Someone asked, they want clarity. We ask applicants, what is an aspect of leading others that they would like to be better at? And we asked them to give us an example when their actions fell short. You know, I'm going to try to help clarify that for this person. What's behind that question, honestly, is, you know, we're not looking for perfection. We're not a program that focuses on, certainly we have had significant journalism leaders and people with significant leadership roles and titles in our program. But we've also had people that are very clearly leaders and growing as leaders, even if they don't have a big title. And so part of this is about helping people grow as leaders. So we're, you know, if you feel very accomplished and confident in your leadership, and you don't really in your heart feel like there are ways you could grow or improve as a leader, or things that you might do differently, but you're not sure how, then the program is probably not going to be satisfying to you, and you may not need the program. So the point of the question is to kind of get a sense of what are the kinds of things that you've experienced as a leader, or areas, you know, again, it is what do you feel like you would want help with and to work on during our program, because we provide and plan a lot of programming, access to leadership coaching and development that we tailor to each class. It's different every year. And so this question helps us begin to get a sense of what your interests and needs in that area are, you know. So it's partly to get a sense of you as an applicant, but then it becomes handy and helpful to us even after we select fellows to get a sense of, you know, what are the kinds of things we should plan to focus on.
It's one of my favorite questions actually in the application, because I really like hearing people. You have to be a little bit vulnerable with us and to talk about something that you aren't perfect at, that you want to get better at. And we do read that to think about how we build the programming for the year.
Yeah. So someone is asking if their interests are interdisciplinary, what do we do as a program to make introductions or give them the ability to work with departments at Stanford? And this person parenthetically says they're thinking about tech resources.
Mm-hmm.
So how about I take that one a little bit?
Yeah.
So we encourage you, we help you, we point you to people to connect to at Stanford across disciplines for lots of reasons. To be really direct about it, and I don't assume that's what this applicant means, but the Stanford, you know, students and faculty or grad students, they're not a labor pool, you know, and we don't encourage you in any way to sort of reach out to them or try to ask them to build something for you. That said, fellows often, the interdisciplinary nature of Stanford is enriching in so many other ways that go beyond task. And you have a lot of access and ability to range across the campus and meet people from all kinds of disciplines. And from those things, there's often collaborations, short-term, brainstorming, advice, exchange of information and ideas. And yes, there have been fellows who've ended up because the students were passionate about what the fellow was wanting to work on, the problem, finding students that have helped them. You know, those are not like multi-year relationships, but, you know, a couple of years ago, some students helped a fellow create an experiment and a prototype to test some use of AI with audio because the students found it a really compelling and interesting challenge. Not necessarily technically, but just in general. So, you know, it's sort of like you also have things that you can bring to them. And so it's in a spirit of generosity. But you do have a lot of ability, but now we want our fellows to take a lot of initiative.
It's very much in an entrepreneurial place.
Yes, and fellows, we point you to some places. Of course, we know people we can introduce you to, but you know, we don't reach out and say to the computer science department, we need 2 students who will help this fellow do this. I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but we might say, hey, there's this professor over here and his students with a lab, and they're working on this interesting work in an area that's related to the things you're interested in. Here's a hackathon. Here's a meetup that's going on. Here's a student group that does meetups. And fellows are very well received by many parts of Stanford. They're valued, they're sought out. So most fellows, I can't think of a fellow who hasn't had some sort of a multidisciplinary experience on this campus. That's what Stanford is about.
Very much so. Lots of questions coming in.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So I saw that someone says because we say journalism entrepreneurs and innovators are eligible, entrepreneurs expected to abandon or pause their ventures during the program. Can they keep working on their ventures from the amazing Stanford campus? And elsewhere in the chat, and I don't want to get the details wrong, but someone said they're currently pitching a podcast idea. And they asked, could they continue to work on that if they became a fellow?
Largely no, because what you want to do is, this is such an amazing opportunity. You want to avail yourself of it full-time rather than part-time. And it's not just the classes at Stanford, which are fantastic, but also the experience with the other fellows. And so we find it really much more fruitful if you find a way to have perhaps a co-founder or a managing editor or someone be able to, you know, have them be the person in charge for the 9 months while you're doing this fellowship, because it's a full-time adventure and venture. So no.
And I would add that, you know, this is not just us making a rule. We have learned from experience. You know, we've had fellows, you know, in past years, not recently, but because we learn, fellows who, you know, intended to set aside a venture, but didn't really have a clear plan for that, then had a plan right before they arrived, and then the plan fell apart and they're scrambling. And they would tell you today, they've told me, that they missed out on things and had a lot of extra stress for the first few months of the program until they could solve that problem.
Right.
We've had fellows who come in thinking that maybe they have a little thing started and they're going to set it aside, or thinking they want to start something, and they use the year to think about what it would look like. Now, often they change their mind about what it's going to be because of the process we work with people on, because we're really focused on what are the sort of problems or issues you're trying to solve. If you already have an answer for what you want to do, If you already, like, as far as like creating something in journalism, you don't need our program. And that's not what our program is for. We're not an startup accelerator. We're not a, a hack room. So, but there are people who do create things or start things. Often they start to have the idea during the fellowship, but they don't actually start it until after the program. They spend the time, and often they change it completely. So, this doesn't mean that whatever you're trying to work on is a bad thing. It just means that's not what our program is for. And you wind up being frustrated.
Yeah.
And the reason we give you the stipend we do is, not to fund your venture, but to support you to have the time and headspace to really focus on being in this program. It's a very busy program. You will have a different pace of life, but you will be busy.
I see two questions. I thought maybe quick ones that I could just take if you.
Sure.
One is this catered mainly for journalists doing hard news or politics? And the answer is no. We're definitely hard news is great, but there's, I don't know what you want to define hard news. I mean, community news, if you're local, international, thinking about big challenges in journalism. So it's not just politics. There's a lot of things going on in the world. So it would have to be something obviously that we think is, an urgent problem in journalism. So I would focus on that. The other is lots of good selfie video questions.
Yeah.
And I'm smiling because I talked about one of my favorite questions, but I would say one of my favorite elements of the video, and Pam and I read these applications differently. I read the top of the application and then I go right to your selfie video because I want to see you. And the 1-minute video, what we're looking for is not a fancy production value, high production value, production. We are looking for you to tell us in 1 minute why you want to be a fellow and what you want to do. And it's just a lovely way for you to come alive off of the page, off of the application, and let us see you and your energy and what you want to do. And so it's very, very simple. Give us a little help here and make it, in a place where you have enough light so we can see your face, make sure the audio is good so we can hear you. But otherwise, it's not a fancy video. And I just love those. Okay, those are two I saw in the list. What other ones, Pam?
Well, there's a couple of related questions about, there was someone who said, well, let me get these. They want to know if there's an opportunity to produce, and while we're focused on leadership, is there an opportunity to produce an end product, such as a paper or an in-depth article looking at a particular industry issue? And the other person asked related, I noticed that at the start of the application, you filter applicants who indicate they help to work on a research project. And the website makes it clear this isn't intended to provide a degree or support working on a book. But can you shed more light on why research projects are excluded and how that's defined?
Yeah, so a couple of things. We're not an academic fellowship. We're at Stanford, but we're not an academic program. So the idea is that we're not looking for an academic kind of an output. We do ask fellows to produce. At this point, we've been doing Medium posts in Medium, the platform, a few times during their fellowship, and these have become very good ways for them to talk about what they're exploring, share that with the world, to seek collaborators. Sometimes fellows have found that have set up a way for people to take a poll or contact them to be interviewed about the topic that they're exploring. So there's ways that we find are more useful than doing like a white paper. And so fellows have written, and we ask them to write a few times a year. Some fellows have written more than that on their own, and that's totally fine. And so there's other ways besides kind of doing an academic white paper at the end that we think is more valuable. Yeah.
So someone asked, you know, we have a pretty expansive definition of who a journalist is. So this person wants to know if that includes time in roles, if we would consider someone who's done like investigative, you know, research supporting investigative journalists or digital security to newsrooms like CPJ, Committee to Protect Journalists. Are those folks eligible to apply? Do we consider them journalists, you know, in our definition?
Yeah, I would say make your case for why you would want to be a fellow and what you would do with your year. There's a lot of ways to do journalism and support journalism. There have been certainly, I think about Open News, the organization that has supported the news nerd community, and there have been great people who've applied and become fellows from that community. So there's a number of ways to make your case that you would get a lot out of this, and that you're supporting journalism. What we don't do, and I think it's very clear on our site, is PR, trade publications, those kind of things that are really not the core mission of journalism.
Yeah, but if you've been in roles, you know, product roles, the kind of roles that, you know, it's not reporter, it's not photographer, it's not editor, but you are helping and facilitating the creation of like journalism.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're on the business side and you can make the case that you're supporting the business side's a little, you know, antiquated term, but I mean that the work you are doing is that you are focused on supporting and empowering journalism, then make your case. Yeah, we try not to define by the very narrow traditional, you know, roles. Not that those aren't also important.
Right.
You can look in any cohort and see people that don't fall in those categories.
Right. That's a good question.
Yeah. So is the program geared toward a certain type of storytelling? Is it geared toward print, digital journalists who can write longer form, or toward broadcast journalists? All of the above.
Yes, all
And
of the
more.
above. Yeah, yes, and yes.
More. And more. We are not like, we don't have a quota. We look for diversity in all sorts of ways. You know, whether that's geographic, that's focus of your journalism, that's your skill set and background, like all sorts of ways, the type of journalism, the medium you're working in. So.
Yes, right. What else here?
Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Someone says, how formed should the focus area be? And the question that asks which ideas they'd like to explore in journalism. You know, would the selection committee be more favorable in a narrower problem in journalism to help solve, or broader? You know, are you looking for specific problems? So, you know, the thing is, if you say you want to save local journalism across the United States, there's no one person who's going to do that. You know, if you're passionate about exploring ways to better connect with and embed journalism in your community, you know, that is part of saving local journalism.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still pretty broad, you know, and it is again a question, a thing that you are interested in working on. It's not, I know that this particular revenue model would save my newsroom, so I want to come there and I want to work on that revenue model on the side along with all my leadership training. Because, you know, we're really focused on helping people sort of, you know, develop some new mindsets that open them up to different ways of addressing and the problems in journalism and problem solving. So.
Right, that's a good point. I think that we part of what we would like to see is that people are gaining new mindsets by being here, and so you may not even know all the things that you're going to learn.
Right.
I have a question. I don't know if it's popped up yet. That I would like to throw out there, which is we often get, which is Can I apply again? And we get that question pretty often. The answer is absolutely yes. And don't just dust off your old application and send it in, because as we talked about at the beginning of this webinar, we have changed some of the questions. You hopefully in 1 year or two, or however many last years went by since you applied the last time, you have changed, your thinking may have changed, you've evolved and learned some things. The world and journalism has certainly changed. So you certainly can apply and just think about what is meaningful and important for you now that you would want to apply. And because we don't, have room to give fellowships to hundreds of people, we do have to pick, and there are great people, unfortunately, every year that don't get in, because we're going to have to make a selection of the mix of people that looks like would be the ones that would make it this time. So every class that I've been involved with for many years, there is someone in the class in their second try or sometimes their third try. And so those people are often some of the best fellows, I find, because they really have had a chance to think. They are working on really what's the compelling thing they want to do. They've refined their application, they've refined their thinking, they've talked to some alumni. So I think really do. If you've applied again, apply before, apply again with some thought. It's a great persistent value is applying again is persistence. It's a great journalism value. So do.
So here's a quick one I want to be sure we talk about.
Okay.
A couple here, and we're about
Get minutes
out. So someone asks if applications from photojournalists are being evaluated in the same way as other journalists. If so, what do those differences look like? I'm not sure I understand that part, but we're not photojournalists, but very much our philosophy is that it's journalism, it's storytelling. There are many ways to deliver information or provide information or tell stories. We really are excited when we have terrific visual journalism applicants. If we have any concern or question about what we're looking at, it's a good chance to point out that, we are not the two people who make all the decisions and do all the evaluating of applications. We tap into our alumni network. We have many alumni who have widely varied experience. We have visual journalists in our alumni pool, and our alumni are very generous in helping us look at applications, point out things we might miss, give us their feedback and all of these things. So every application is seen by more than one person, and they're seen by people who have different strengths, different perspectives, and so you get a really full look. This is not we don't know about that, or that doesn't seem interesting. We intentionally draw on a wide variety of people in our network to help us, because they see things and they see possibility and potential that we might miss.
I would really like to just to echo what you said. We really, really like visual journalists, and what they bring, the special benefits and characteristics they bring to a class. And so I would encourage the person asking this question to go look back at this class and the last number of classes. We have a Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist, our animator. We have a fantastic photojournalist from the Midwest. We have a lot of visual people in our classes because we do value it. So they are definitely judged the same as any other candidate, and there's a lot of eyes on our applications.
And also, Dawn, our amazing JSK team who are sitting here in the background are reminding you and I that it's really important that we encourage applicants. Do not be shy in your application about celebrating your accomplishment.
Yeah.
We journalists don't like talking about themselves. Journalists, most of us are not comfortable with, if you will, marketing ourselves. We're focused on telling other people's stories or helping other people tell their own stories.
Yeah.
In this moment and in this opportunity, you are your best advocate. And so help us understand, your awesomeness.
It's
And
not,
your talents and your
yeah.
skill. Do not assume that that is being egotistical or that that is going to hurt you in the application. We work with our fellows to say you are your best advocate, and that's particularly important these days. So
Yeah.
don't be shy. Don't hold back.
Don't hold back. Don't think it's bragging. Celebrate your accomplishments. We don't know, we're not mind readers. We want to know what you've done that you really think is something we should think about. And this is a journalist and sometimes culturally an issue. So help us understand, who you are and what you've done so that we can know the best you possible for this application.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So someone wants to know, there are a couple of people who've asked questions like, what if I work in what they're calling service journalism? And somebody else asked about, are we only open to hard news? And, so service journalism, consumer product reviews, buying guides, explainers, make your case. I mean, there's a wide range of those. If you're doing it for what we used to call a trade publication, then the bar is going to be higher for you. Or something that is purely like promoting products, not reviewing them, but promoting them. That clearly would not be eligible. But, make your case for why you're passionate about the work you do. And, and then the great way to sort of articulate that too is in how you answer the questions about your professional goals and what you want to contribute.
Help us pick you. Help us read their application and say, wow, this is a fantastic person that we really want to have in the program next year. They're curious, they're collaborative, they have great questions they're asking. And so help us because, we want to say yes to great applications. So we're down to 4 minutes.
Yep.
Do we have any final question? Then I'm going to do a little quick closer. Any burning big last question?
Let's
I think
see.
we got through quite a few.
Got through a lot of these.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just start and you can. So first of all, you can write to us if you can't find the answer to your question on the fabulous FAQ. You can write to us at JSK Fellowships at stanford.edu if you didn't for some reason get your question answered or something came up and oh wait, I should have asked that question. So before you go, important message. Don't miss this opportunity. Your future self is going to thank you for applying for this fellowship. If you're worried that you won't get in, I can guarantee you one thing. If you don't apply, you won't get in. So don't count yourself out. So please apply. If you're sitting there with your almost finished application and you're like, I don't know, push submit. Read it over, make sure it's really great, and then push submit. Your application is going to be read carefully by real people, the people you're seeing on the screen, alumni reviewers. We have a selection committee. A lot of people are going to be taking careful review of what you've written. If you have a passion for reimagining journalism, we want to help you be the best candidate you can be. So if you're here at this webinar and you're eligible, we encourage you to apply. So you can follow us on social media. As we said, we're at JSK Stanford everywhere. Our inbox is open, JSK Fellowships at stanford.edu. And please do the best application you can. We really, again, we all read it and we want to pick great people. So please do just a BAFO application and we look forward to seeing that very soon in 1 week. Okay. Thank you for attending. We look forward to reading your application and thanks for being here.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.